I said earlier, this is going to be the first session of Keeping It Real. And like you guys know, I wanted to get something like this started, bring people, real people that have goals and have things that they want to achieve, and they have already made steps to achieve those goals. And I wanted to bring them here for them to share their story and what they have done to be able to achieve some level of success. A lot of you are probably going through situations where you have things that you want to do, and probably fear is stopping you from doing it. Other situations are probably stopping you from doing it, but I think that these type of sessions, bringing people that are in different genres, different industries, bringing them here to share their story and what they did to get out and make that step to move forward, would be a good thing. So today, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, I have a good friend of mine, Ryan Poirier. He is an author, guys, and I just wanted to show you guys especially what he has done. These are his comic books. They're published right now, really good. I want you guys to check it out, but we're going to be hearing a bit more about it very, very soon. Welcome, Ryan. How are you doing?
Good, buddy.
All right, so guys, this is Keeping It Real. I just want to, this is just a regular conversation that we want to have, and wanted to just ask Ryan about the whole process here of how he got these things going, and let you guys hear about it. So, Ryan, I think everybody first wants to know a little bit more about you, man. So, tell us, who is Ryan?
Who am I? I'm a cartoonist, writer, dreamer, I guess you could say. I've kind of always had a kind of a daydreaming kind of a personality, so writing kind of goes hand in hand with that. But yeah, this is just kind of been a passion that's been of mine since as long as I can remember. I think grade 4 was when I started to do artwork. My inspiration was The Simpsons, Wile E. Coyote. I used to write my own, draw my own sketches of them, draw my own little comic strips. Darkwing Duck I used to draw my own of. And then my biggest art influence was Bruce Timm, and he did the Batman animated series.
Okay. Oh, wow, man.
And they came out, I don't know what grade I was in, but shortly after Batman Returns came out. So I remember ever since seeing that for the first time, it kind of, his artwork inspired my artwork, I guess you can say, because it's still, if you look at his stuff like Time to Adventures and stuff like that, it kind of still has that old golden age style of animation, which is always what I prefer.
Right.
I'm a big fan of that era, Walt Disney's era, or Tex Avery, old school kind of cartoons.
Right.
Chuck Jones is another name. But then the way he draws superheroes like Batman and Superman, I always found that an easier way to draw them than it was drawing the detailed comic pictures that like see Jim Lee be drawing, for example.
Right.
So that just kind of, in a way, pushed me more to drawing that and practicing. And eventually I got tired of drawing other people's characters, and I thought, okay, I'll start creating my own characters.
Interesting.
And then I started creating my own stories, and it just developed from there.
So good. So like you said, you started creating your own stories. So in terms of this story here with your comic book, have you created other stories before that? I should ask that one.
I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I wrote at least 5 other stories before I wrote this one.
Yeah. All right, so I know there are probably going to be some people that have ideas of writing. Now, when you have an idea of a story, what do you do to get started? Because I mean, myself too, I wanted to write a book before, and then when you get to the first page, it's like, all right, that page is blank. I don't even know how to start it. How do you even start writing your story? Or do you do certain things to get started?
From what I've talked to with the publishing company I was with, and when they asked me that, the way I write is apparently different from most traditional ways of writing. I have a weird idea of a concept that I want to tell and a story I want to tell. Usually I'll see where the story's going to end up, and I'll write the ending first, and then I'll go backwards and see where I'm going from there. But even then, I won't write a script. I kind of I have an idea of the characters I want, the kind of jokes that I want to play through,
right,
and just the storyline I want to tell. And I don't write a traditional script before going ahead. Like sometimes I will, but a lot of times whenever I'm actually drawing it, I'll end up changing the story halfway through. So to save time, like for drawing the herd, I started to write a script, but I was noticing it was changing like maybe a quarter way into drawing, compared to the script, it was changing. So now I know roughly where my story is going to go. I have my notes, but I more or less write it as I go.
Wow.
So when I get to a new blank page, I was like, okay, what needs to happen on this page? And I'll picture the frame and everything. But then, and I know where the story's going to be going, but the actual dialogue and stuff for that page, I just make up on the spot.
Wow,
and I'll usually draw the pictures and I'll write dialogue to whatever the picture showing.
Whatever the picture is showing. So that's interesting. Probably not everyone does it like that. I think that everyone needs to find what works for them. I think the key here is that you actually had an idea and you got started with it, right? And I wanted to touch a little bit on that actually. So the idea of the herd, when you got that idea, what did you do to actually get started? I mean, I think that's where a lot of people right now, they have an idea of starting even some of the comic books. They want to get started, but they don't even know where they should begin. Should they just start drawing? Should they start writing? And something that can initiate that. I think that's what people are looking for. So what did you had the idea? Did you have the title? Did you know the title and everything before?
No, the title didn't come till I was starting to actually put the book together.
Right, okay. So you had kind of visual of what you wanted to put there,
yeah.
Right? How did you transition in actually getting that started then? Like the first thing that you did?
With these characters, I created the first concept where, I just wanted to create my own superhero story. Superhero comics at the time, when I first created these characters, it was back in 2001.
Right.
And it was for a college project. I had to do a flash animation short. And I wanted to draw something that was simple. And my favorite animal was a fox, so I figured I want to make a superhero out of a fox. And there, it was just focused on a fox and a rabbit, and it was his sidekick. The rest of the characters, the whole family dynamic wasn't there. It was only the two characters. And I created a concept of the character, a design of the character, a little cartoon short I did for school. But then I pretty much sat there, and it was just a little story of him stopping his villain from a bunch of vegetables coming to life. And that was it. It was supposed to be a superhero story that I wanted to tell that made fun of superhero tropes and just what their stereotypes are. Because that's one thing I've always liked about, is for comedy is parodies of things,
right?
Satires. So, but then I put it on the shelf for a long, long time, and I just started developing characters. I wanted to build this universe. I wanted to build more villains, and that's probably the funnest thing about writing a superhero comic, even more than the superheroes, is creating the villains for it. So I started creating villains, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to make a bigger team of heroes. And so I thought the family dynamic of Fox and his wife and his kid being three of the main characters in that team.
Right.
The original title of this originally it was called Fantastic Fox.
Right.
And that is still the character's name, but it was a few years later when a certain animated stop-motion movie came out called The Fantastic Adventures of Mr. Fox. And I was really upset at that point. I was like, son of a... But when I looked into it, that story goes back to like 1974.
Right.
So, before I was even born. But I had never heard of the story, and to this day I still have never seen the movie.
Wow.
But I was like, okay, well, I need to change that. And so that's where I didn't have a name for this book for a very, very long time. Until I started to actually write it, that's when I was like, okay, well, it's a herd of animals. It's a group of animals. That's why it's going to be called a herd. But the name Fantastic Fox, I was still concerned about, but I've talked to a few other publishers and a few other people, and there's a big difference. His name's Fantastic Fox because his ability is he's fantastic at everything he sees.
Right.
Everything he can think and do, he's fantastic at. He can't die because he's fantastic at living. So, whereas the other book is called Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's describing Mr. Fox as being fantastic. Two different things.
Wow.
So, that's where I was like, okay, well, maybe I can still get away with it. And I was like, well, whatever, I'll just do it anyway. But the main title of the book is called The Herd, so it varies away from that name, right away being recognized as something else. And then as far as writing the story goes, I basically just started to build all the characters, giving them personalities, and I didn't realize at the time, but all the personalities of the characters, there's 5 characters in the group. They're all one of my personalities.
Right.
Like one of my personality traits makes up those characters. Then I knew a story I wanted to tell, and I wanted to be an origin story. And I wanted to be ridiculous, and so the way they get their powers is through an accident through a fruit juice factory. And that inspiration came from just because I love fruit juice. I love drinking juice, I'm a juiceaholic. And so I thought, why not that be it? And at the same time, thinking ahead, thinking outside the box. If ever this were to take off, that could be another marketing thing, is having its own line of fruit drinks.
Right.
And that's kind of...
That is very cool.
Another thing.
Visionary right there.
Well, that's kind of something I wanted to keep in mind. I wanted to create something that was for all ages, something that could be made into action figures, something that could be made into juice or cereal products. Ideally, this was always meant to be a cartoon show.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, why I wrote this book, because after I animated the first short with this, I liked drawing Fox and animating him, but to do it all by myself would just take forever.
Right.
And Flash is now an obsolete program. No one really uses it anymore. I still use it to make this book, though, just because it's easy to use. But as far as animating goes, it was taking forever. I needed voice actors, and it was just a lot of work. And I was like, I can do the same kind of thing, and what would take me, the only time it would take me to do like a 4-minute animated short, I can maybe write the better part of a book.
Nice.
And draw it. Especially when you're figuring it's 12 frames of animation per second, and that's drawing it every single time. I could be then instead drawing 12 panels in a comic. So then it was just kind of taking that origin story and working with it, and it wasn't an overnight thing. I've been working on the story for 16 years, but I finally actually worked and fine-tuned it. And it wasn't the first book I did this. Actually, the book I started to do was called The Fates, and it was another story I'd written that I wanted to tell, and it was a superhero story as well, but it was really dark, not for kids at all. And so right away, I lost half my audience.
I see.
And so
And you did that when? When was that?
I started that... I've been working on this for 2 years now. I think I started The Fates maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I wrote 7 screenplay scripts for it, because it was going to be 7 books. I wrote it all out, and then when I started to draw it, that's when I realized, and I was drawing it on paper, like big sheets of paper with pen or a pencil, and inking it, and coloring it. That would mean then scanning it in.
Right.
And the whole process was taking a very long time. And I got maybe the 3/4 of that first book done. And when I tried to start scanning them in, I started to have some problems. And I was like, this is just taking forever. And then I thought, well, Fox, or these characters, I created on Flash so they had that vector image look. And that was kind of the design that I was always meant for them to have. And then I thought, just logically, how doing myself a favor and doing myself less work before getting this to publish. The beauty of doing something online and digital is you can then make online copies of your progression in your book. So I can release a PDF of the first chapter if I want to before it's published. And so I was going to do that with The Fates, but I was noticing that even though all the scripts I had written, I was deviating from the scripts a lot when it came time to writing it. Maybe it was too complex of what I'd written down, and it was too complex for me to draw. or whatever. So I put that on pause, and I was like, I'm gonna start all over and do something that it's a story that I was easier to tell as an origin story, because The Face was a really complex story. This is a lot easier to tell. It's easier to get to the point, but within this first book, planting seeds for future volumes, because I have a story planned out for 5 more volumes after this.
Okay. Oh wow.
So
5 more volumes after this.
yeah,
That's awesome. That is awesome.
so to answer your question as far as how to get that inspiration for the writing part, it's whatever it's whatever comes to your mind, like, and just work on it, develop your characters, and eventually that storyline will play itself out for you once you know how the characters' personalities are, once you know how they interact with each other, once you know what all their goals are, their struggles are. You can take it from real life if you want to. A lot of real life experiences and just opinions are in this book.
That is good. That is good.
And
So
just
real
real
life experiences.
Real life experiences, struggles, there's some moral lessons, jokes that, personal jokes or jokes based off of friends of mine, or moments that were funny in my lives and friends' lives that I've incorporated into this, that really come across funny, but it's tickles my bone and other friends' funny bone more, who know that joke personally. When they read it, they'll be like, okay, I get that. Whereas someone else, they might not get the joke, but it's still funny.
Yeah.
Eventually the story just starts to write itself. Once you know the characters kind of speak for you.
Wow.
And that's probably the biggest thing, is know your characters, know their goals, know what their personalities are, and just put them in a situation. And then kind of give yourself a split personality if you can.
Wow.
So, and that's kind of how we do. Because whenever I'm writing for Fox, I'm like, well, what would Fox say in this scenario? And where if I had someone helping me with this book and they could help me write it, they don't know Fox as well as I do, and they wouldn't say that. Then once you know the characters, then you'd be like, okay, well, what kind of story do I want to tell with these characters?
Right.
And I want to tell a superhero story that has a continuous, ongoing thing. Like it never really ends. But somewhere in there, you want to have your big reveal, your big plot twist to make your story continuing ongoing.
Awesome.
And that will happen in volume 5.
Wow.
So it's all building up to that.
And you already have a visual of the full thing, right?
Yeah.
And before you got started, you had this visual before you even got started, right? Already developed.
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part.
But that took 16 years of writing, rewriting, redesigning.
So that's something I wanted to bring, because you said that earlier. It took 16 years, and the thing is though is that you tried it. You started, it didn't work. You tried something else, and you just kept building on that until you found the direction that you actually wanted to go in. And I think that's what I think a lot of people that they need to know. It just didn't happen just like that. You didn't just go and get these comic books published. It took some time for you to actually find the right direction for you to get this out there, to enhance your skill even more. Even your creativity, expand your vision, expand your mind. It took some time to get to that point, and it happened because you tried 16 years ago and you started, and those things didn't work, but you kept on doing it. And I think then that's what I wanted to touch on too, because 16 years ago, that's a pretty long time ago.
Yeah.
And from that time, when you started and it didn't work out the first time, what made you go and try again, to do something again and keep going? What was motivating you to keep going and do it?
Just because this is just what I wanted to do for a living. I used to work after college, I took multimedia design in college, at Durham College, and then I worked at Chorus Entertainment doing stuff for YTV, Treehouse, like Berenstein Bears, and I did stuff for that for the better part of a year, but it was all contract work. And after that ended, trying to find anything in the field, I applied to many different animation studios, and just nothing, they weren't hiring, nothing was coming out of it. So that's why I started to write my own stories. And like I used to write my own comic strips like back in high school. I've got at least like 9 books I've written at home that, if not more, I can't even remember now. They're in a box somewhere, but I've written full books, like comic books. It's just, they're just sitting there.
Wow.
But, and I never did anything with them. Now, if I go back and look at them now, they might be a little crude, which is another reason why I'm glad this took 16 years. Because I practiced the craft and I practiced really bringing life to the characters. Because if I had done this 16 years ago, it wouldn't be the same. It'd be a very different story. The characters would look totally different. But ultimately, just based on friends and stuff who know my work, a lot of them gravitated towards Fox and these characters. So that was kind of what always told me to go back. And even when I was writing the Fates, I would always, when I wasn't actually working on it, just doing sketches, I kept on working on this.
Right.
So ultimately, a voice in my head told me, and was telling me, do this, don't do the Fates, you'll be better off with this. And even then, whenever I started to finally do it, I actually finally started to put this whole thing together, and this was back in, I think, June of 2016. I got maybe like half of the first chapter done. And I went to a fan expo in Toronto, and I spoke with a DC artist. And I thought it was in line because they had a bunch of DC artist scouts looking for artists and stuff. So I wanted to bring what I had and just the other characters of mine. I brought some stuff from the Fates, I brought stuff from this book. And only to find out that they were looking for DC artists, so someone who can draw Batman or the Flash. And I was like, well, I can, but that's not what I do. And so then when I saw him, he looked at my artwork and he tore it apart. He's like, this character reminds me of an existing character, this character looks like this. Because even then, these characters look completely different.
Right.
And I'd already started to write this book, so I got very discouraged. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to learn from this as opposed to, take it constructive. Because even though he did rip it apart, he did tell me he liked it and told me I had something.
Oh, really?
And even if someone does rip you down, I always try to find a silver lining on everything. Just because I don't like no one likes bad news. But anytime I hear bad news, I always try to find some sort of silver lining. Just to slightly pick up the mood. And that's where I found my silver lining from that was him saying that I did have something if I just changed the way the characters looked. So I went back and redesigned that chapter, kind of rewrote it, redrew a lot of it. And I didn't let it bring me down, and largely just because after I left Chorus Entertainment, I couldn't find anything in the field. I had given up, and I had to be like, well, what's the point? Like and after every year that went by, my skills in that field, were more and more outdated compared to anything new they were teaching. So much so that when I ran into my college professor, one of my college professors a couple of years ago, and we're catching up, and I said, so the course we took, is it even, he's like, no, it doesn't, all those things don't matter anymore.
Wow.
So for that reason alone, that's why I was like, okay, well then I need to tell my own story. I can't sit there and keep handing out resumes, I can't sit there and keep applying to stuff. I need to make a living, and I worked for Scotiabank during this whole time. And so I had my bread and butter through there, but it's not where my heart was. And any other job I had, it's not where my heart was. I was always daydreaming, thinking about this, thinking this is what I want to do. And even when I did work at Chorus Entertainment, drawing and stuff, and getting paid to do it, it's not what I want to do. And that's just because, I think it's just because I always had that entrepreneur mind where I just wanted to write my own stuff and draw my own characters. And that's when I came to the conclusion where it's like, well, even if I got hired at Pixar or whatever, unless I end up becoming a creative director, which is not going to happen when you're walking into the company. I need to go on my own and make my voice my own currency.
Awesome.
So and there was a lot of things that were discouraging me along the ways, whether it was, finding out that Flash is now an obsolete program, my last saving grace from college. Having a professional DC artist tell me, no, this is shit. But I don't care. Like, that's one person's opinion.
Good.
So,
awesome. I hope you guys heard that. Because yeah, I mean that's important to know. Because you know, you didn't allow someone else to hold you back from going after what you really want to achieve, and that's something very important. You hold true to yourself. You know what is it that you wanted to do, and you're not going to allow someone else to slow you down from doing it. You're not going to allow someone else to prevent you from moving forward. You're not going to allow what anyone tells you to prevent you or stop you from making steps to move forward. And I think that's important. That's the mindset that you know everyone really needs to have, especially if they have goals. Because you know they're going to be faced with different things. Sometimes even your parents would sometimes tell you, hey, you know what, they don't want you to go and do this, but you know within yourself what is it that you always wanted to do, and you wanted to go after it, and nothing was going to stop you. No one was going to stop you, and you have to have that that hardcore, that insane mentality, that obsession to really go after and achieve this thing no matter what. That's the type of mentality that you have to, and you had it to really go forward and get this done. Now you mentioned we have a few more minutes, and just have a few more minutes left. You mentioned a little bit about the struggles that you had. So you had someone telling you that the drawings, this doesn't work, and all that. I'm sure you had some other struggles though getting started, and I know that we had our conversations as well. I know there were times where you felt you just needed that extra push to go forward, and we spoke a little bit on our mentality, right, and how our minds tend to sabotage a lot of the things that we want to go after. And I think I heard it from Mel Robbins, with the 5-second rule, where you have 5 seconds to take action on whatever it is that you want to do. And within those 5 seconds, if you don't take action, the mind is going to sabotage whatever it is that you wanted to do. And we spoke about that. And it was really cool to see that you made a decision to just go and do it. And you went forward and do it. But during this process, I know you had some struggles, and although these are published right now, I think people will want to know too, although this is a great achievement, what are some of the problems that you are seeing on this journey? What are some of the things that are probably trying to slow you down even more? They're probably trying to attack your mindset even now, right? We want to hear some of those things.
That's still going on today. Like I had a bit of a down day last week where I was just completely discouraged with everything. Because I'm self-publishing, and that's a big difference between publisher and self-publisher. If you're with a publishing company, or if you get a publisher, they kind of have a lot of say and ownership to your characters and your story. So they're like, okay, the first volume went really well, this is how we feel volume 2 should go. I don't like taking direction from people, I really don't. And especially when it comes to my own work, it's just like, no, like I said before, like they might say that, it's like, well, no, that character wouldn't do that. I know my work better than anyone else. So I went to go self-publishing, but in self-publishing, you don't have that person doing all the promoting for you. You have to do self-promoting and self-marketing. And there is a route in self-publishing that you can get help with that, but it means a difference between 40% royalties and 10% royalties.
Okay.
And it's a significant cut. So, and the goal here is not, obviously I would like to make money off this, but that's not why I went out to do this. And if you're publishing a book with the goal to make money and that, you're going to fail right away. You've already failed because it's not going to happen. You're doing it so that you can tell your story, and so you can leave your fingerprint in this world, even in the literary world, well after you've gone. And that's kind of more or less what I want to do. Whether it gets caught on or not, it's a story I want to tell. But that's even with having that mentality, it's still very discouraging because it is expensive. I think I've invested over $8,000 so far in this project. And I I mean, I don't owe anything. I've been smart about it, making sure I pay it off right away. But it's still, what's discouraging is I want people to read the story.
Right.
And when, you know, I'm posting stuff on Facebook and on Instagram, you know, and friends and family, like, you know, will go and drop like 60 likes on it and comments and way to go, we're so proud of you. But then they don't turn around and then support you as far as reading it or buying it. It's like, well, you can sit there and support someone all you want, friends and family, but it's like, you're not putting your money where your mouth is. So are you really supporting me?
Right.
Like, and I'm not going trying to beg for money or whatever, but it's just, I just want them to read it. I've even offered, like, I've even given away, like, because I was kind of at a point where, like, someone needs to read this, and I was desperate, so I offered to give away free copies. And I still didn't get responses, so I was like, so when you see that, that gets extremely discouraging, because you're like, well, what's the point? Why am I even doing this?
Right.
But ultimately, and I had that same argument earlier, actually even earlier this week, I said to my wife, Crystal, I was like, why am I even doing this anymore? Like, no one's reading it. Now, mind you, then she always reminds me and step back where I've only done this since October.
Right.
That's when the last book was published. And I'm just impatient.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing is patience, because it's not going to be an overnight success. And if you think it is, you've already failed.
Right.
It might not catch on for another 10 years. It might be a cult hit at that point. But at some point, the right person will read it. And that's what you have to keep as your light at the end of the tunnel. Like, at some point, someone will like it, someone will appreciate it, and someone will take off with it. I mean, you know, look at a lot of the comic artists, like, what is it? I'm trying to think of some of their names. The guy who did Kick-Ass, for example, Mark Millard, I believe his name is. Like, you know, he's now being given contracts. He's got a universe of characters, like from Wanted, Kick-Ass. A whole, I think I got that name wrong.
Yeah?
You might want to edit that out.
Don't worry. We keeping it real, man. So even if it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter.
I'm getting my names wrong. But anyway, the guy who wrote Kick-Ass, like he wrote that, I know, but I'm not sure when he wrote it, whenever it came out, but even still, you know, he didn't write that right away. It became successful. He had to keep on working, he had to keep on promoting it, and that's basically what it is. And that's more what the job is, more than even doing this, is than doing the marketing. And it's a lot easier nowadays than it was a long time ago because of social media. But with social media, you also have the trolls that will rip it apart, and you can't listen to those either. You just have to ignore or take out what is constructive out of all that criticism and ignore the rest.
There you go. That's it, and that's important to know. And I know it's going to be tough, right? Because everyone, you know, the hope is that everyone will really like what you do and or like what you publish. But you just got to come to the point that not everyone is going to like it, and you just got to accept that, really, right? Is the thing is that you got it out there, you got what was it within you out there. And that is a big success. That's I wanted people to know that. But these are our guys. I want you to see. These are his 2 books. This is the first one here. The Herd. This is the second one, right? And it was hard to get the first one done, right? And you know, of course, you said that, you know, some people probably haven't even purchased it yet, you know, friends, family, etc. And you have trolls saying different things, but you know what? You went through it, and you didn't let it stop you, that you went forward and you did your second one. And I think that is a big achievement and is really good, and that you're continuing to work on the other things, right? On the other publishing. So that's important, because it shows then too that, you know, you're not going to allow other people to depict who you are, or to redirect you in you know, something that they want you to do, and stop you from really going after what your vision is.